In the heart of West Africa, a quiet revolution is unfolding. A nation once labeled poor, dependent, and fragile has taken a step that few thought possible. Burkina Faso has stopped taking foreign aid. Not paused, not reduced, and stopped completely. The world did not expect this. Why would a country walk away from what many call free money? Why would leaders reject donor pledges, loans, and grants that governments across the global south still compete to receive? The answer lies not in desperation, but in confidence. And at the center of this decision stands a young leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This is the story of how Burkina Faso, against all odds, has done what the West feared most, proving that dependency was never destiny. The moment no one saw coming while the world debated economic forecasts, gathered at global summits, and signed new donor pledges, Burkina Faso quietly crossed a line that few nations dare to approach. There was no flashy announcement, no international applause, and no front-page headlines. Just a silent, strategic shift. Burkina Faso closed its doors to foreign aid not as a temporary measure, not as a bargaining tactic, but as a deliberate choice. No new loans, no grants packaged with conditions, and no humanitarian assistance disguised as political influence. Instead, the government declared, "We will build with what we already have. We will survive and grow on our own terms." This act may appear small, but in the world of global politics, it is seismic. For decades, countries across Africa were told that survival without aid was impossible, that foreign money was oxygen, and without it, collapse was inevitable. Burkina Faso just proved otherwise. Why it lost its shine? To understand why this decision is so groundbreaking, we need to ask, what went wrong with aid in the first place? On paper, aid was supposed to build nations, roads, schools, hospitals, and stability. But in reality, the story was different. Roads were built but often led to mines controlled by foreign companies, not villages in need. Schools were open but curricula often reflected foreign perspectives, not African history or culture. Food aid arrived but it destroyed local markets, leaving farmers unable to compete with free imports. What was presented as generosity often came wrapped in conditions. Budgets had to be adjusted, policies had to be rewritten, resources had to be managed in ways that served donors, not citizens. The effect was subtle, but corrosive. Over time, nations stopped asking, "What do we want to build?" and instead asked, "What will donors allow us to build?" Dependency replaced sovereignty. Burkina Faso's rejection of aid is not arrogance. It is exhaustion. Exhaustion from pretending that dependency was a strategy. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a leader who symbolizes change. Every revolution needs a symbol, and for Burkina Faso, that symbol is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. At just 36 years old, he became the youngest head of state in the world. To many outsiders, this was shocking. To many Burkinab, it was inspiring. He wasn't a career politician. He wasn't groomed in Western institutions. He was a soldier shaped by the struggles of his people, and determined to end a cycle of dependency that had lasted generations. Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not rise with fiery speeches alone. He rose with action. By closing Burkina Faso's doors to foreign aid, he sent a message louder than any declaration. A new era has begun. The power of self-reliance. Burkina Faso's decision would mean little if it stood on nothing. But this isn't a gamble. It's a strategy. Gold retaining the nation's wealth for decades. Burkina Faso's gold was extracted by foreign firms, shipped abroad, refined elsewhere, and sold back at enormous profits. The nation dug. Others decided. Now, for the first time, Burkina Faso has built a high-capacity national gold refinery, capable of refining 400 kilograms of gold every single day. This is not just an economic project. It is a declaration. We will keep value here. We will no longer be the world's supplier of cheap raw materials. Agriculture feeding the nation and beyond. The same shift is happening in agriculture. For years, Burkina Faso imported rice, tomato paste, and processed foods despite having fertile land and skilled farmers. Tomatoes rotted in fields, while supermarket shelves were stocked with imports from Europe and Asia. Now, with the construction of a modern tomato processing plant worth $8 million, the cycle has been broken. Local farmers supply the plant, jobs are created, and the finished product serves both domestic and regional markets. Rice production is expanding to not only to feed Burkina families, but also to supply neighboring nations. Burkina Faso is not just rejecting aid, it is replacing aid with trade, a psychological revolution. The most powerful shift, however, is not financial, it is psychological. For decades, aid taught countries to wait, to ask, to depend. Burkina Faso is teaching its people to trust themselves. The question is no longer what can others give us. It is what have we always had that we refuse to use. This shift is transformational, because when a people start to believe in their own capacity, no external power can fully control them. The machinery of aid. To see how bold this decision is, we must revisit the history of aid in Africa. After independence in the 1960s, foreign flags came down, but foreign control did not end. Colonial power simply changed its clothes. Instead of armies, contracts arrived. Instead of direct rule, aid programs were launched through structural adjustment policies in the 1980s and 1990s. Countries like Burkina Faso were told to privatize state companies, cut spending on health and education, and open markets to foreign investors. In exchange, they received loans and aid, but these policies crippled public services. Hospitals collapsed without funding, schools suffered, and local industries died. The aid system was never designed to build true independence. It was designed to manage dependence. But Burkina Faso's decision, therefore, is not just financial. It is historical. It is reclaiming a future that was stolen through polite contracts and smiling diplomats. The global reaction. So how has the world responded? Western governments, predictably, are cautious. Some warn of instability, and others question whether Burkina Faso's reforms are sustainable. But behind the skepticism lies fear, because if one of Africa's poorest countries can reject aid and survive, what excuse remains for richer ones? The truth is uncomfortable. The aid system is optional, and that reality threatens the influence of nations that have long used aid as leverage. Meanwhile, across Africa, the reaction is different. From Mali to Niger, from Guinea to Ghana, young people are watching. They see Burkina Faso standing, and they are inspired. The West's fear. So what exactly is the West afraid of? Not Burkina Faso alone, but the idea it represents. If one nation proves that sovereignty is possible without donor money, if one country demonstrates that wealth can be kept at home, if one leader shows that aid is not oxygen, but chains, then the entire system begins to crack. Burkina Faso is not just fighting for itself, it is exposing the truth. Africa has always been rich enough to stand. Of course, challenges remain. Rejecting aid is one thing, sustaining independence is another. Can Burkina Faso's gold refinery maintain transparency and efficiency? Can its agricultural reforms withstand droughts and market fluctuations? Can its leadership resist pressure from global institutions and internal opposition? History warns us that nations who challenge the global order often face sabotage, not always openly, but subtly, through media narratives, trade restrictions, and political isolation. The test ahead is not just about economics, it is about endurance. But there is a wind of change sweeping across the Sahel, and Burkina Faso stands at its center. This is more than a policy shift. It is more than an economic experiment. And it is a declaration of dignity. Burkina Faso is saying, we no longer wish to be saved. We simply wish to survive on our own terms. And in doing so, it is forcing the world to ask uncomfortable questions. What if aid was never the solution? What if dependency was never natural? What if Africa was always capable of building its own destiny? In the heart of West Africa, a young leader and his nation have lit a flame. It may flicker, it may face storms, but it will not go out, because once a people taste true independence, they cannot forget it. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, not only for Burkina Faso, but for Africa. The question now is not whether the West fears this change. The question is whether Africa is ready to follow. So, what do you think? Can Burkina Faso's path become a model for the continent? Can Captain Ibrahim Traoré withstand the storms ahead? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe Africa's story deserves to be told in its own voice, like this video, share it, and subscribe for more. Because this is just the beginning. Story tells by African Light.